book lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today with finally my top 22 books and series of 2022. I love filming this video every year. I get so hyped up about it. However, coming to the conclusion of what books will make the list is the hardest part. Literally 20 minutes ago, I was like internally debating my entire list, and I was thinking, I don't know whether that book should be on this list as opposed to this book, or this series should be on this list as opposed to this series. I hope that I'm at least happy with the list that I'm going to be putting out today. The top 15, at least, I'm very much certain about. But I mean, this is a good problem to have, because when you've read so many books that you've actually liked in a year, yes, it is hard to make these lists. However, that means it's been a great reading year, so I cannot wait to talk about the books that made it a great reading year. Guess without further ado, because we will be here forever if I don't move on, let's start the countdown. I just realized that there is one book on this list that I wanted on this list, but I never put it on this list. Dang it. I'm gonna have to take another series out from this list. Unfortunately, I had to remove the Wicked Villain series from this list. I was initially going to make this list. I'm still like unsure about it because I love 4 out of 6 of the books, and the characters, some of them have a special place in my heart, especially the characters in The Beast and the characters in A Worthy Opponent. Books 3 and 4 in the series are 2 of my favorite books. However, I don't know if 2 standout books in a 6-book series can compare to a book that I slid onto this list. So I guess there we have it, but the Wicked Villain series is an honorable mention that I initially put on this list, even though I've been spending probably a couple of months working on the top 22 books of 2022. I should have probably spent more time this morning to like really think it out to add this book. But number 22 goes to Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn. I love the Legendborn cycle. It's a series that is very much entertaining. I also very much love the character of Bree. I also love the mysterious character of Selwyn. I cannot get enough of him. And what I liked about Bloodmarked specifically is that it amplified the romantic aspects a little bit more, and that's why I actually prefer it over Legendborn. I think some people prefer Legendborn more. The reason why it is this low on the list though is because I'm not that into Arthurian legends, so at times when I was reading Bloodmarked, sometimes I had to mentally put myself back into the story. So yeah, like the reading experience, while it was entertaining, Arthurian legends, I don't know why, it's a me thing. They don't keep my attention. However, Tracy Deonn has done the absolute most to make sure I keep my attention in this series. Maybe because I'm not into the Arthurian legend myself, however, I'm more invested in the characters that have been placed in this series and these situations. I'm still able to enjoy the series, however, it's not like my favorite. This all being said, Bloodmarked was an absolute delight. It was definitely a step up from Legendborn in my opinion, and I desperately need the 3rd book now. But number 21 holds a book that I actually finished this morning as I'm filming this video. I wanted to finish this book in the lead up to this video to see whether it would make the list. It has made the list because I am satisfied with the conclusion, but it is also lower down in the list because it wasn't the most satisfying. However, in a way, it really satisfied what I needed from the series, if that makes sense. These Twisted Bonds by Lexi Ryan. I finally read it. Look, I initially thought to myself, maybe if I read the first book first and then went straight into the sequel, maybe I would enjoy it more. But as I've been thinking about it for a few hours, that is not the problem here. It's the duology problem. I personally had the same problem with A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown, except I feel like these Twisted Bonds gave me the answers that I needed and did not end off on an open-ended ending. Thankfully, it actually came to a proper conclusion. The problem is this series should have not been a duology. It should have either been a standalone or it should have been an extended series, because there's so much potential in this world and with these characters. The thing I wanted the most out of the sequel was more Finian. And yes, we got more Finian, but he doesn't pop up until 25% of the book, and this is a very chunky book. This is essentially meant to be a video of me talking about why I like it, but the reason why it's low on the list is because while it is a satisfying conclusion, and I am very much happy for the characters and where they ended up, I really wish that the series got extended. However, I'm very satisfied with this conclusion. I think Lexi Ryan did an excellent job with it. If she did not rush it, it would have been so much better. It makes my favorites list because when I was reading it, I was very much excited to be back in the world and be around the characters again. This series had the potential to be the next Iron Fae series, and it missed the mark because it was a duology. It was very much limited at the end of the day. Plot number 20 on this list has to go to the Kingdom of Sand and Sky trilogy by Sarah Henning. I was also anticipating this book series to be higher. I personally love the sequel, The Queen Will Betray You. I reckon that that is a very strong sequel. However, the finale, while it was strong to a point, it also has a very rushed and kind of downer of a conclusion. You see, the thing is, the ending of the trilogy is very much realistic. It is disappointing in some way to those who wanted to see Amarande succeed in the best way possible. I mean, thankfully, a solution to her problem was somewhat made. Like, there was a little bit of a loophole there, which honestly, I'm happy that Sarah Henning explored, but personally, I kind of wanted to see how society was 25 to 50 years later. Because yes, Amarande wants to change society, and society is not going to bend for her. But if she takes on the role of what she did at the end of the series, a small little epilogue is not going to cut it, especially if it's like a few months or a year later. Yes, I do want to see them in the near future, but I also want to see what happens to society after that change was implemented, if that makes sense. This series was definitely impactful. I love Amarande and Luca. I've seen so many political marriages in YA, and I've thought to myself, why is this a thing? Why is there toxicity in this? I think I hold young adult fiction to a higher standard because the target audience for young adult fiction starts at the age of 12 or 13. I personally hold young adult fiction to a higher standard because it could play a part in shaping younger minds, helping them figure out what is right in a relationship and what doesn't work in a relationship. I am happy that in this instance, within this series, the relationship dynamic between Amarande and Luca is there. I reckon they're a perfect example for young adult readers of younger ages to aspire to be that when they eventually take on a relationship in the future. I will always love this series. I do wish we got more, but I wanted to see that because I wanted to see how the events of this trilogy affected society in the future. Plot number 19 on this list goes to a Colleen Hoover duology. It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover takes this spot. And the reason why I had to put it on this list is because this book series, while it's not perfect, it had an impact on me personally. This duology made me realize a lot of things about myself and my situation at the time I read the first book. It really opened my eyes to a few things, and if anything, I'm really thankful for it. So that is a big reason why I've decided it goes on this list. Yes, It Starts With Us was fan service. However, what I appreciate about It Starts With Us is the happy ending after the storm. I love the message that it sends. Oh my goodness, I don't want to get emotional here. I love the message that it sends in a sense that, yes, getting out of a toxic relationship is hard, but that doesn't mean that you don't deserve love afterwards. And that does not mean that you don't deserve happiness afterwards. Being in a toxic relationship beforehand, going through that traumatic experience, regardless of what your former toxic partner says or a former toxic friend says, you do deserve love. While I do see It Starts With Us as fan service, I appreciate it for that aspect. I really appreciate that it was written, even if it was years later, even if Colleen didn't initially plan it. I'm kind of happy that it was a good, nice, sweet epilogue companion to It Ends With Us. It Ends With Us isn't a pleasant book to read. It's not a pleasant book to read at all. I wouldn't recommend this book for pleasure whatsoever. I read it out of curiosity, but it ended up actually helping me. If you want to read it out of curiosity, read it out of curiosity. If you want to read it for a romance, do not read It Ends With Us for a romance, because that's not the purpose of the story. The purpose of the story is to raise awareness that toxicity can happen in relationships, even from those who are hurt the most. Sometimes the people you love hurt you the most. And that's what Colleen essentially wanted to say through this series, and it was actually a message I needed to hear this year. I went through a falling out and it wasn't easy, but Colleen made me realize that I shouldn't blame myself for that. This duology was a very healing one for me to read. Plots numbers 17 and 18, I had to tie. This was so difficult to choose. However, I feel like one is more 18 and the other is more 17, so maybe spot number 18 I will give to Wraith Kings by Grace Draven, and spot number 17 I will give to Master of Crows by Grace Draven. I personally love the Wraith Kings duology, and I've noticed that it's probably Grace Draven's most hyped series that she's put out. Master of Crows is severely underhyped, and I went into Master of Crows not expecting any anything from it, and I think that's why I liked it better. I also think I liked Master of Crows better because it's a Beauty and the Beast reimagining, and I love Beauty and the Beast. But I love the Wraith King series because it's such a wholesome romance between these two characters who find friendship in each other, and then they have to be lovers. It's so cute. I am honestly in love with this duology and with the relationship in it. Yes, there are questionable things about the Beauty and the Beast relationship in Master of Crows. However, I think Grace Draven did tread carefully where she could. Also, I kind of wish that we got an extended epilogue in Master of Crows. However, I feel like the story is even more memorable because it very much satisfied my Beauty and the Beast loving heart. With Wraith Kings, it was just more of a wholesome fantasy read. Both of them stand out to me in different ways. However, I think I prefer Master of Crows over Wraith Kings. This being said, they are very close on my favorites list, so I decided to talk about them together. And at number 16, we have the Hot and Hammered series by Tessa Bailey. Some of you guys might be wondering, wait, G-Swizz, wasn't your favorite book by Tessa Bailey My Killer Vacation? The answer is yes. I do love My Killer Vacation, and so far it is definitely my favorite book by Tessa Bailey. However, I don't think my reading experience of one standalone book can beat a reading experience of a 3-book companion series that I read within 48 hours because I was that obsessed. This all being said, I don't love Fix Her Up. Fix Her Up was a 3 out of 5-star read for me. However, the series got better with Love Her or Lose Her and Tools of Engagement. I love this trilogy. I love the premise of it. I think Fix Her Up could have been better if Travis had more character development. If we had 50 more pages focused on his sole character development, then I'd be happy because I think that the romance and the way that it ended up was a little bit too rushed for a character who wasn't really emotionally mature. So yeah, that's just my personal opinion. But overall, I really love this series. I specifically love Love Her or Lose Her because it follows a couple in a 10-year marriage who are struggling. And personally, I appreciated it a lot because I rarely see romances that follow married couples, and because I am married myself, for some reason, I would love to see second chance romances taking place within a marital setting. And honestly, I reckon that Tessa Bailey wrote this one very well. Love Her or Lose Her knocked me out of the park, and it made me fall in love with this companion trilogy. I would definitely recommend if you are looking for a great romance companion trilogy that has a pretty cool setting. I really enjoy it. I loved the overlapping characters. I loved the friendship group. I loved it all. I would recommend it to absolutely everyone who is wanting a new romance read. If you gave up on Fix Her Up, please read the other 2 novels. Love Her or Lose Her and Tools of Engagement both are top tier quality romance novels in my opinion. Spot number 15 goes to King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. I did not anticipate loving this book that much because I actually thought that this book was not going to have any plot. I thought it was just going to be steam. I thought it was just going to be vampire smut. That's all. I attempted to read it because I needed a pick-me-up. I think I was going through a reading slump at the time. This book, however, stopped that reading slump. Yes, it does have some steam in there, but there is a plot. The funny thing about the plot is that I was initially going to write a WIP focusing on the same plot. And then when I found out that Scarlett St. Clair wrote about that same plot, it made me question my WIP. That all being said, it actually made me really happy because I really liked to read about it. I could have been disappointed, but I think I was just overall surprised. I really like this story. It has elements of Castlevania, Daughter Smoke and Bone. I mean, if you know, you know. I really loved the first book. I could have read the second book by the time this video goes out, but based on my first book rating, I've put it onto spot 15 here. And in spot number 14, we have the Atlas 6. I personally really loved this book, and I think what I initially enjoyed about it was that I actually expected to be intimidated by all POVs. However, I never got any of them mixed up once. They were very easy to follow. Every character was distinguishable, and majority of them I got attached to. I very much love Libby and Nico and Parisa personally. I am so looking forward to my reread. I think I was in a bad headspace when I attempted to reread it, and I really did not want that to cloud my judgment in terms of putting it on this list ranked. Thankfully, I put it on this list ranked before I attempted my failed reread. I do want to read the Atlas Paradox. However, I think I've got to save it for 2023. So I'm putting the Atlas 6 here. I really liked the Atlas 6. I would definitely recommend the Atlas 6 for those who are intimidated by it and have not yet tried it out. I know it's not everyone's thing, but I think I appreciated the Atlas 6 because it gave me something that books like Six of Crows with like the multiple perspectives didn't give me. I think Six of Crows was written in a way that was a little bit more confusing, whereas the Atlas 6, it felt a lot easier. I think that Olivia Blake did an excellent job writing the Atlas 6 for everyone to understand. In spot number 13, I needed to put this on this list because if I was to put Hot and Hammered on this list, but not put the Bromance Book Club series on this list, it'd be absolutely ridiculous. I love the Hot and Hammered series. I would recommend, if you love the Hot and Hammered series, to then go on to the Bromance Book Club series because they both give me a similar vibe, except what I appreciate about the Bromance Book Club series even more is that while the Hot and Hammered series follows a female friendship group, the Bromance Book Club follows a male friendship group who come together to read romance novels to improve their relationships or their love lives. And it is something wholesome that I did not know that I needed until I read it. I actually started reading the Bromance Book Club right after a book that made me angry and sad. I talk about that book in my most disappointing reads video if you want to check that out, but I essentially picked up the Bromance Book Club series to see if it would help me forget about that experience, and oh boy it did, because I mean that book was so disappointing. I ended up like being angry and emotional over it. The Bromance Book Club series, however, eased all that pain. I got so excited over following these characters and their stories. It was just one of the most wholesome reading experiences I have ever encountered in romance fiction. If you guys are wondering, I have read books 1 to 5. I just finished A Very Merry Bromance, so yes, I'm definitely in the mood to gush about the series. I would 100% recommend it. If you are sleeping on it, please don't. I know that so many people are saying in the community that the first book is the best. I wouldn't measure the series by that. I'd say that every book is absolutely amazing. It really just depends on what you prefer. I do love the second chance romance in the first book. And seriously, I do think that the first book conveys the message of why the Bromance Book Club exists and why it is important. So yeah, I think that the first book is very powerful in that aspect. However, the entire series is great because you get to follow the rest of the bros, and all the bros are amazing. In spot number 12, we have Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. So I initially wanted to read volume 3 before filming this video. However, I think I am certain as to where I put it. I love this story. I am not going to lie. It is slow at the moment. Initially, I expected Hades and Persephone to be kicking off their romance now. I don't know what happens in volume 3, but what I do know is that in volumes 1 and 2, it is 100% a slow burn. I am just honestly waiting for something to happen between them. Fingers crossed it happens soon. If it doesn't happen in volume 3, okay, I will still read the series. But the reason why I've put it kind of not closer to 1 and I've put it at 12, like somewhere in between, is because I'm still waiting for more to happen in the series. However, I find the reading experience absolutely wholesome and I love the art, but also it hits home in a lot of ways. It's a very emotional read. I do recommend you proceed with caution and check out the trigger warnings for the series because it does get pretty dark and deep, but it's incredible. And overall, I'm very thankful that I picked this up. I heard about Lore Olympus back in its earlier days when it first became popular on Webtoon, and I never tried it out. I'm just really happy that through it getting traditionally published, I was motivated to pick it up and find one of my new favorite series. In spot number 11, we have Kingdom of the Feared by Carrie Maniscalco. This is the third and the final book in the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy. I love this trilogy. I love the way that this trilogy ended. Do I think that there should be a spin-off? Absolutely. This book series does deserve a spin-off. I reckon that Carrie Maniscalco could continue writing in this world. I wouldn't get tired of it. It's the underworld. I mean, of course. There's so much more to explore, and I don't think that a trilogy is enough. I mean, she wrote 4 books in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series where she's following Audrey Rose. In my honest opinion, I think that that series was long enough as it was. It could have been longer with like multiple POVs because it could have been more fascinating. That's just my personal opinion, and unfortunately it did not end up on this list this year, even though I expected Stalking Jack the Ripper and the entire series to make this list. But Kingdom of the Feared makes this one. I really loved this finale. At times the finale was slow. The two main characters were separated at times, but when they were together, oh boy, the scenes were amazing. I loved it. It definitely satisfied me in all aspects, like romantic aspects, steam aspects, plot aspects, like it just had everything and I loved it. This was like a 5 out of 5 star finale. I enjoyed it and I cannot wait to see what Carrie Maniscalco will write next. I hope that one day she does revisit this world because I feel like there's more to discover, but Amelia and Raph's journey is very satisfying, and I love Raph so much more than I did when I first started the series. And I think rereading this series this year was an absolute delight. It was a reminder that this series is indeed one of my favorites. Spot number 10, we have This Vicious Grace by Emily Thiede. I am so pleasantly surprised by this book because I did not know what to expect from it, but I ended up devouring it within one sitting. I haven't stopped talking about it on my channel since. It was definitely one of those books that just knocked me out of the park, definitely impressed me. I'm pretty sure Emily Thiede is a debut novelist, so that is incredible. I loved the two characters, loved the Shatter Me vibe, but also the fantasy aspects mixed with the apocalyptic aspects. Kind of incredible. Emily Thiede did an absolute amazing job with this first book in a series, and I need to know what happens next because the ending of This Vicious Grace really got to me. I love the two characters we follow and their bodyguard romance. I love the dynamic. I just really enjoyed this novel, and yeah, I understand why a lot of people don't love it because it's very slow. However, I am obsessed. It's on my top 10 of the year. How cool is that? And then we move on to spot number 9. The Fair Isle trilogy makes spot number 9. I've talked about this trilogy many times on my channel. I read it in the middle of the year. It's very well written. It's what I wanted from The Cruel Prince and so much more. I do love The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I put The Cruel Prince by Holly Black on my last year's top list. I still love The Cruel Prince. However, the Fair Isle trilogy satisfied my Cruel Prince withdrawals. When I'm also mentioning the Fair Isle trilogy as well, I'm also making it inclusive of the Entangled with Fae books that I've also read. I've read the first 3 Entangled with Fae books as I'm talking right now. I would say overall I am obsessed with the Fair Isle world. I personally do love Evelyn and Aspen's story. However, I will read absolutely anything in this world because I love the politics and the setting of the Fair Isle trilogy world. Also, Tessandra Odette is an excellent writer as well, and I reckon that she writes her romances very well. They are definitely more on the new adult side of things. However, they very much do cater to young adult readers who are of an older age. They feel very much like romantic fairy tale reads, probably suited to the upper YA demographic. And I've talked about it on my channel countless times. If you have not yet read it after how many times I recommended you to read it, I really don't know what to tell you. That's on you, man. Spot number 8. We have Among Us series that essentially took my entire world by storm this year, and that, my friends, is Chainsaw Man. I had to put Chainsaw Man on this list. I mean, it literally had to go on this list because it is a cultural phenomenon. Pochita is a cultural icon at this point. No joke. At my desk, in my office, I have this picture. I have this picture on my desk to remind me that yes, I might work hard, but Pochita, being a cultural icon, works harder. This series, I had no expectations for it to begin with. The name Chainsaw Man, it makes it sound like an American comic book that's like completely random. Like, he sounds like a character from The Boys. However, this series has absolutely nothing to do with the American comic book genre. It is so different. I only came to this certain realization when I was explaining to my work colleague what Chainsaw Man was about. They had the assumption that Chainsaw Man was one of those like vigilante series that were very much similar to the comic book genre. You put an object or you put some sort of weapon in front of man and there you go, you have a superhero name. It's nothing like that at all. And I think I came to that personal realization the other day when I was describing it to them. I was like, wait a second. Yeah, you're right. I also did assume before going to the series that it was going to be one of those shonen series. It's nothing like that at all. I would say if you are concerned that the series reads like an American comic book, don't worry, it doesn't. Even though Chainsaw Man is like the main character, it's a little bit deceiving. I think it's deceiving because we are so used to Marvel, DC, and other TV shows and other movies and other comic books kind of defining what some sort of vigilante name means. I love Chainsaw Man. The heart and soul of it is friendship. And I mean, Pochita is the realist. And in spot number 7, we have The Blood Trials by N.E. Davenport. Initially, when I first read this book, I told myself it was in the top 5, but you know, when you read more books in the year, things get moved around and whatnot. But this book, I'd have to say, is definitely high up there because it is definitely one of the best books I've read in a long time. I think it's the only sci-fi book at the top of the list. I'd have to say it's the best sci-fi book I read this year, 100%, hands down, because the rest are more like fantasy, paranormal, and I've read a few sci-fis this year, but The Blood Trials absolutely demolishes those because it is so good. I, once again, read this book within one sitting. I still recommend it to absolutely everyone. one. When I first read it, I was surprised because I read it almost 6 months after release, and I was shocked at how low the amount of Goodreads ratings there were. In my personal opinion, that is ridiculous because this book is so good. This book did not get the hype that it initially deserved. I personally hate that this is going to be a duology because I am scared that it is going to fall under like the duology problem. However, what I love about the Blood Trials is that it is a very full and complete book that I do have faith in N.E. Davenport to deliver in its sequel and its conclusion. The second and final book is one of my most anticipated releases of the year. The Blood Trials absolutely blew me away. I wish that more people were talking about this book. It is incredible, and once again, I'd say if you love Squid Game, or if you love The Hunger Games, if you love Divergent, if you love Red Rising, this book is for you to try out next. It is just one of my favorite books of all time now. Probably my favorite sci-fi of all time. And the top 6 books and series that I have on this list, they were the hardest to choose from. But I decided that at the top of the list, I was going to rank full series because if anything, the full series satisfied me more. However, the next 2 on the list, numbers 5 and number 6, are continuations of series that I have categorized below the completed series that are my absolute favorites of the year. Numbers 5 and 6 were the hardest to choose in terms of ranking because if anything, I really don't know which one I prefer. However, I'd have to say number 5 is number 5 for a reason, and number 6 was number 6 because I don't think that it could compare to number 5. Anyway, I mean, it's quite obvious. Let me just tell you about it. Okay, so number 6 is A Light in the Flame by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I would have expected, just like last year with A Shadow in the Ember being in the top 5. A Shadow in the Ember and From Blood and Ash were spots 4 and 5 last year. I was expecting it to make the top 5. It did not because there were some other picks that I have on this list that just beat it. However, A Light in the Flame, if I did not read those other books, like this one would have definitely been one of the best books in the top 5 ranking this year. And what I love about A Light in the Flame is that, yes, there is an emphasis on the romance, but I just love Sarah and Nyktos' dynamic more than anything. It was a big slow burn in the first book. However, we get more relationship development in the second. Their relationship is not perfect. However, what I appreciated the most as a married woman who is constantly hashing things out with her partner, I appreciate that in this book, yes, there are flaws in this relationship. However, they do get addressed. Communication eventually does come, but also it just felt wholesome. I also very much appreciated the plot. As much as I somewhat relate to Poppy more in terms of life circumstance, I really, at the moment, very much resonate with Sarah. The fact that she doesn't value herself and her life. Like, I have very low self-esteem at the moment. I think this year I'm really going through bad imposter syndrome and whatnot, and I am overcoming it. And I love that Sarah is trying to overcome the exact same thing and eventually acknowledges it. Nyktos is the fictional bae of this world, like the fictional bae of this world. In my personal opinion, the Flesh and Fire series at the moment is the superior series in this world. Like, yes, I do like the Blood and Ash series. However, book 4 kind of knocked that series down in spots. I was expecting the War of Two Queens to make this list. It did not. A Light in the Flame did that instead, and this book is so good, I now just want to reread it. I also reread A Shadow in the Ember in the lead up to A Light in the Flame, and it made the experience absolutely amazing. I actually went into A Light in the Flame with low expectations and with no motivation because I hated the War of Two Queens that much. However, I am happy to say that A Light in the Flame absolutely delivered, and I think it would have made spot number 5 if spot number 5 did not involve 2 amazing books. So, spot number 5. Once again, very hard decision to make because I had no idea where to place A Light in the Flame and Court and Charm by Tracy Wolff, but I've placed them here. I did not think that this series would surpass Blood and Ash or Flesh and Fire this year, but it did. I love Court and I love Charm for different reasons. Court is an amazing book because it very much brings the plot forward after Covet. Covet was a very tough book to read because it involved a lot of character development, a lot of slow moments, it involved captivity. The reason why it was kind of a harder book to read was because the characters were essentially in captivity for majority of the book and trying to strategize. What I love about Court is that it kind of makes up for the fact that the third book was slow, picks up the plot, and really focuses on Grace's character development. In the process, we are separated from Grace's love interest because they are on the quest to do something else. In a way, it really focuses on her specifically, her powers, and her growing into them. Charm, however, this book is what I needed from the very beginning. Charm is technically book 5 in the Crave series, but it is also a prequel to books 2, 3, and 4, and 6, which is a bit complicated. However, the ending of book 4 leads into the prequel book, and the prequel book leads into book 6. It is very very complicated to explain. If you have read past Crave, or if you've read Crush, I think you might know what I might be referring to. But let's just say we're going back into the past and we are following a specific love story. Book number 5 is slower. However, I did not anticipate this book to have plot, and it did have plot. It had a very significant plot that leads into book 6. I'm so excited. I stayed up all night reading Charm, and it was an incredible experience in my opinion. And I went to work that week and I found my work colleague who also really loves this series, and as soon as I told her that I finished it, we pretty much spent almost the entire day gushing about how amazing Charm was. Court and Charm were experiences that I will never forget. I really love A Light in the Flame almost just as much, but I think the experience that also came with Charm and having a friend who was just as obsessed with the idea of Charm, that made it a little bit more exciting, and that's why I bumped it up. But also, I think waiting for the payoff or waiting for a specific story after all this time and finally getting it, that was the most satisfying thing that our fandom could get. And spot number 4, we have the Prison Healer Trilogy by Lynette Noni. I am so happy I was impressed by The Blood Trader. The Gilded Cage and The Blood Trader, absolutely amazing sequels. I read The Prison Healer last year, but I revisited it this year. I kind of really loved revisiting it because as much as I enjoyed my reading experience from the get-go, it made for a much better experience going from The Prison Healer to The Gilded Cage. It was painful because I had read The Gilded Cage a couple of months before The Blood Trader, and I shouldn't have, because The Blood Trader answers so many things after the cliffhanger of The Gilded Cage. The Gilded Cage has the worst cliffhanger ever. I do not envy anyone who read The Gilded Cage straight away because the cliffhanger is terrible. Like, I would have wanted a better epilogue. I would have wanted something that kind of like ended on a better note, but no, I felt so sad after the ending of The Gilded Cage because that ending was so torturesome. But The Blood Trader, as much as the book is also torturesome, like the first 100 pages are so painful to get through, but the ending to the entire trilogy, the conflict resolution, everything coming together, it's all so worth it. Once again, I feel like this series is worthy of a spin-off series because Lynette Noni built such a fascinating world. I won't be mad if Lynette Noni does not write a spin-off series. However, it has so much potential to become a spin-off. I love these characters. I'm obsessed with the series. I reckon that Lynette Noni did an excellent job. So far, this is her best work yet. And I'm also very proud of her as an Australian reader as well. From someone who also read and enjoyed her Madoran Chronicles, which was a series that came out here in Australia. Eventually, it got international rights. Lynette Noni has come a long way. And as a fan of her works, I'm really proud. Alright, we're at the final 3. Plots 2 and 3 were also really difficult to choose from as well. But what it came down to in terms of making the verdict and finalizing it was looking at their final books in the series and figuring out which one was more disappointing. However, spots 2 and 3 got very similar reactions out of me, meaning that they were both adrenaline-inducing reads. They were both 4-book series. Both of them kept me up at night. Both of them got me thinking about life and thinking about a lot, but ultimately I came to a decision in terms of their ranking. So spot number 3 goes to the Diviner series by Libba Bray. This would have easily been spot number 2 if book number 4 was not that disappointing. I love this quartet and I would still recommend it for the most part. I reckon you should go into book number 4 proceeding with caution. You have been warned that book number 4 does not end off on a strong note and it doesn't necessarily end off on a consistent note. However, the entire quartet is absolutely incredible and you can tell that Libba Bray put her heart and her soul into this series. You can tell that this book series was written over a 10-year period. Look, I beg to differ with book 4, but the first 3 books were incredible. And also what I find personally funny with spots 2 and 3 is that both third books in the series ended up being the best books in the series and setting up the book series for the best finale. But I mean, both of them didn't have like the best finale as opposed to their third books. Before the Devil Breaks You has got to be one of the best books I have ever read in my entire life. I don't know why I slept on it for years. I mean, I know why. I was scared. I thought to myself, yeah, I'm not going to be into this at all. But I would recommend this series to anybody who is into fantasy. If you are into horror or if you're into paranormal, then like that's even better. You would definitely enjoy it. If you are into historical fiction, I reckon that you will enjoy the Diviners trilogy because yes, while it is a historical fiction and it does pick and choose things from the 1920s and it's not like completely historically accurate because yes, there are paranormal themes in there, it's very good and it definitely relies a lot on the history of that time. I thought it would be a chore to read it. I literally went into the Diviner series just expecting to be creeped out and whatnot. I was curious because yes, I had the books on my shelf because I purchased them due due to FOMO, it being a special edition and everyone buying special editions of the Diviner series at the time. But also, I was curious as to why people still kept on saying it was one of their favorite series, even though I was hearing negative things about the 4th book. I still read the series despite hearing about the 4th book being disappointing. What I can say is, yes, the 4th book is disappointing, but did it put me off from the entire series? No. Does this mean that the Diviner series is one of my least favorite series of all time due to its 4th book being not that great? No, that's not what I feel at all, because the first 3 books had such an impact on me. The entire cast of characters had such an impact on me that I honestly, at this point, don't really care. I mean, yeah, I was angry about the 4th book for 48 hours, but I got over it, because overall, the series is incredible. The top 2 series picks of the year have been written by the same author, so I'm guessing once you find out pick number 2, you will know what pick number 1 is. My second favorite series of the year has got to, hands down, be the 4 Horsemen series by Laura Falasa. I went into this series actually expecting a very cozy, warm romance with, yes, brooding characters, but I expected it to be a very warm romance. No, this series is a horror. And also, this series is a villain romance where the 4 horsemen find love, but the 4 horsemen do terrible things. Look, I had no idea that this series was going to be a favorite of mine. Would I be scared of the 4 horsemen if I met them in real life? Absolutely! Do I reckon that the dynamic is not like the healthiest? Yeah. However, do I love the series because it has Beauty and the Beast elements? Absolutely. I love myself a Beauty and the Beast reimagining. These books are not Beauty and the Beast reimaginings by all means. I mean, at least that wasn't alluded to. They seem like Beauty and the Beast reimaginings. However, they more explore the idea of humanity. And what I like about the series as well is that, yes, the 4 horsemen are technically kind of like the love interest slash main characters, but their love interests and the POVs that we follow are strong women who have been through a lot and will not take any of their BS. I mean, yes, they do fall in love with them, but they're not that naive. They're very smart, and I loved following every single one of them. I love the entire cast of characters, and I love the overall message of the series about humanity, saving humanity, preserving humanity, and what it is like to be human, and not being afraid of that at the end of the day. I will forever remember the series, and the 4 horsemen have not left my mind. They still live in there rent-free, along with the characters of the #1 book series of the year for me. My favorite book series that I read this year, I had to reread it to confirm that because I had read so many series this year that honestly there were too many, and I assumed that this was going to be my favorite of the year after some time, but I needed to reread it to confirm. And what I do have to say is my reread 100% confirmed that the Bargainer Trilogy is the best series of the year for me. Bargainer Trilogy by Laura Falasa was a series I expected to like, I expected to enjoy, especially because it has elements of fantasy series and fae series that I do like. However, I did not expect this series to consume my life both times that I had read it. I was not expecting this book series to make me cry as much as it did. I did not expect this series to make me constantly bring up this series to Camilo every single time we talked about love and romance, and I would be like, oh yeah, the Bargainer Trilogy and Desmond Flynn and Calypso, oh my goodness, I love them, and I want a best friend like Temper and whatnot. I would constantly bring this series up and its characters and elements of the story. I would constantly bring this up to Camilo, and yeah, he's probably sick and tired of me talking about the series, but the Bargainer Trilogy has become my new obsession. I constantly talk about the back and forth that happens in Rhapsodic and how obsessed I am with it. I love the finale of Dark Harmony, how Dark Harmony essentially tore my heart into pieces and then eventually put those pieces back together. This series also is very special to me because Calypso is going through a healing journey, and Desmond also recognizes that because he's also had to go through a similar healing journey. Their dynamic eventually very much reminds me of Nesta and Cassian's dynamic in ACOTAR. Calypso very much reminds me of Nesta, except Nesta I think has more time in the ACOTAR series to kind of like look unlikable, but then all of a sudden you get to know who she is. Whereas with Calypso, you get to see her at her most vulnerable part of her life at some point, but you also get to see her hardened self in the future. In terms of characters I've read this year, I love all the characters that I read in my favorite series this year, but I don't think I've been more proud of a protagonist this year than I have with Calypso. And I'm so happy that she's found happiness in Desmond. I love them as a couple. I also love that she has a friend in Temper. This series is incredible in my opinion, and I cannot believe I read it in its final year of being an independently published series. This series in 2023, at least in the Commonwealth I'm pretty sure, has been picked up by a publisher. The series will have like new covers and whatnot. Yeah, I'm gonna get the new covers because I love the series. When I found out that the series is no longer going to be an independently published series, you know how in my unhaul I unhauled the binder. Yeah, I kind of took it out of my unhaul pile and put it back on my shelf. I love the Bargainer Trilogy so much that it's one of those series I would collect editions of. The Bargainer Trilogy is absolutely beautiful, and it's fresh in my head because as I'm filming this video, I read it 2 weeks ago. It's one of those series that every single time I put the book down, I needed more. I craved more. It is rare that a book series makes me feel an intense need like that, but the Bargainer Trilogy did. Laura Falasa, so far, in all of the books that she's written that I've read, has, and it's incredible. So I have found a new favorite author in Laura Falasa, and I found a new favorite trilogy in the Bargainer Trilogy. So that is going to be it for my top 22 books in series of 2022. That took a while. However, I love filming this video every year. I love coming up with this list every year. It was a tough list to come up with, but we finally got there. I only just realized as I'm filming this video, I did not include House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J Maas. I don't know where I would have put it on this list. I actually was waiting until I read a few books before putting it on the list, but I just realized that, yeah, I did enjoy it. It was just not one of my favorite books of this year. And Sarah J Maas is still one of my favorite authors, like, ever. But I think a lot of people agree with me in saying that it's not her best book that she's put out. This all being said, the series is really exciting still. There are so many other books that I could have put on this list because overall, as I'm filming this video, I've almost reached 300 books, so there was a lot to choose from. If you happen to stay to the end of the video, leave me the blue heart emoji because I love the color blue. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social media. At GSwizzleBooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also at Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at GSwizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it into double. Started out with half and I flipped it into double.